Hey friend, welcome to Grounded, the Vestibular podcast. I'm Dr. Madison Oak, aka the Vertigo Doctor. I am the vestibular physical therapist who is here to help you with all things dizziness, imbalance, and vertigo. In this podcast, we explore the fascinating world of vestibular disorders. Come with me as we dive headfirst into a journey to discover the mysteries of the brain, the inner ear, and the balance mechanisms that keep us grounded. Whether you've been managing dizziness for one day or 25 years, we're going to get real about what it takes to manage dizziness, handle the anxiety cycle, and thrive, not just survive, with your vestibular disorder. First, I want to remind you that this is never medical advice. Remember, this podcast is for informational purposes only and may not be the best fit for you and your personal situation. It shall not be construed as medical advice. The information and education provided here is not intended or implied to supplement or replace professional medical treatment, advice, and or diagnosis. Always check with your own physician, medical professionals, and healthcare team before trying or implementing any information found here. Hello, and welcome back to Grounded. My name is Madison, and with me today I have Jenna, Dr. Jenna.
Hello.
We are talking about saying no and why it's so important. I think this is really underrated, and the two of us were just saying before how much we love to say no.
Say it nicely, but I protect your peace.
For real. My favorite thing that you say to me, Jenna, is just because you are not busy does not make you available.
Just because I'm available doesn't mean I'm free.
Yes, that is what you say. And honestly, it's life-changing. You don't need to do everything.
Just because there's nothing already in that calendar slot doesn't mean I want to fill it with something. Or maybe I'm filling it with alone time, and that's okay.
I totally agree. I feel like I can't say everyone obviously, but I feel like the majority of people our age definitely have some sort of FOMO, fear of missing out. And I personally just don't have that. Like, I don't really care if you're doing something and I'm not there. But I feel as though maybe when you have a vestibular disorder, not maybe, when you have a vestibular disorder and you are dizzy and you're like, I want to be able to do all the things, and now I can't do any of the things, then when you start to be able to do some stuff, you just say yes to everything. I've seen this happen with patients.
Yes. Or sometimes too, I feel like there's a little bit of that like grass is greener type of thing. Or it's a lot easier to say
Hmm.
like yes in your head. And then you think about like the energy, like coordination, like what am
Hmm.
I putting off instead that I like now feel like I'm cramming into a different day, like cost. And that's when people all of a sudden
Hmm.
have that like, oh, we made plans, then everyone like knows that they're just gonna cancel a few days later. I'm like, what? I'm
Hmm.
like, why don't you just say no to begin with?
Yeah, people
Uh,
who do that, I don't understand, but I
but
totally agree.
it reminds me too of when we were looking for a house. Like,
Hmm.
like it just gets so weird or interesting, like where your mind goes. Like sometimes I was
Mm.
like, oh, well, there's not like a specific like dining room spot. Like you can't have a lot of
Mm.
people like over to eat. And then I'm like, okay, stop right there. When, like, how often do I have people over specifically to eat? Not that often. Like, it's maybe a handful. It's maybe because of just how plans work out. Or I'm like, okay, is this me like discovering I really want to be a dinner party person? I'm like, let me sit with that. No, I don't. So why am I all of a sudden being like, oh, that house won't work. It doesn't have a dining room to fit like 10 people. It's like, no, I never want that many people over in my own home. I can go to someone else's home for that, or we're going somewhere else where I don't have to like cook and clean up after it. So I think
Yeah,
sometimes in like a different lens or scenario, sometimes that seems to like go on as well when it comes to like, I don't want to say no. It's like, okay, but like take a moment and really think, was I actually
hmm,
going to want to do this? Am I really going to enjoy myself and be happy that I dragged myself out there? And maybe that's not really the case, but like you just all of a sudden are like, but no, I need to do it.
I agree. And I will say, as people who, I won't say we're dinner party people, but usually my husband and I are the people who have everyone over. And my mom was always like this when I was a kid. She was like, the more the merrier. Like, there was always like 15 kids at our house. We were always having a blast, whatever. So that is like definitely my MO. But like, we usually throw the Super Bowl party at our house. And this year, I looked at my husband and I was like, I will not be doing this year. And it was actually excellent. I was like, this is the best day of my life that I don't have to. And it's like four other people were like, hey, we're having Super Bowl parties because no one planned anything. You guys want to come over? I'm like, yes, I do. Like someone else will figure it out. So if it's about having been the person who always throws stuff like constantly, I hear you, I feel you, I am that person. But sometimes it's okay not to do it. And I think the importance of saying no as a human being, but also as a human being with a vestibular disorder, is not about just isolating yourself and saying no to everything and all of that. Like, I don't recommend that either. But knowing your boundaries, knowing, just like you were saying, the things that will actually make you happy and fulfilled versus doing things just because someone said, hey, come over or hey, come do this. Like,
Yeah,
what will actually
like
fill your cup?
having more intentional thinking about
Mm-hmm.
things sometimes, and there's that slippery slope or the fine line between like it becoming like you said, like very isolating. But
Yeah.
I think lately I've just been kind of like, oh, do I actually really want this? Or like I think of like sweets or something. I'm like, okay, I have the sweets. I don't have to finish it all
Yeah.
right now. If I'm feeling full, it's literally going to go in the fridge and it will be there
Yeah.
tomorrow. Like I don't need to do this feast or famine. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is my like tiny little like reptile like survival brain kicking in. Like no, I can set that in there and it will be there tomorrow and it will be
Yeah.
fine. And then I get to enjoy it for 2 days. Like
It's true. It's true. I feel like the other thing people will say is that it takes them longer to recover now, so they do fewer things. And I want to comment on that because I have an Aura ring. I haven't been wearing it lately, but I generally have an Aura ring. And I wear it kind of usually all the time. And when I wear it, I notice when I'm at home, not doing much, my sleep score, my recovery score, like all of those things are all really high, which is great. The higher those numbers, generally, the better. Then let's say I go camping or go to a friend's house and stay up too late, or I don't know, go do something that's not just like stay home, which again, I'm not advocating for everyone staying home all the time. That is not what I'm saying at all. But I'll go do that one thing, and it will take, according to my recovery score, 2 or 3 days to recover from that. Now, generally, I feel kind of okay. But then, if I actually think about it, even before I look at the score, it's not like I'm looking at the score and being like, I don't feel good anymore. I'm very much not like that. It doesn't like affect my mood. Um, I know for some people it does. But when I look at the score, I'm like, oh, I actually haven't recovered from that thing I did on Sunday when I skied for 6 hours or went to my friend's house and stayed up too late or went camping or whatever it was, traveled, went on a plane. And I think that prior to maybe having this type of information on a wearable or maybe intentionally listening to your body more because you have a chronic illness, people just do not listen to their bodies as much as they should and therefore overextend themselves and be like, I'm fine. I was always fine. I always bounced back so quickly. But in reality, your body was like screaming for help. Does that make sense?
yeah, sometimes I think of it in like the world of sleep, right? Like I was like I'm going to fall asleep instead of studying more. Sleeping is
Mm-hmm.
studying in my head. And sometimes I feel like it's that combination of people don't realize how bad they feel until they realize what it is to feel good. Like for sleep as an example. So sometimes I feel
Yes.
like it's like I have a Garmin like watch that gives me like a body battery stress type of here's my battery recharge type thing like the Aura ring. But I think sometimes like okay, it's a typical work day if I'm doing like my home health visits, like in and out. I'm like, overall, I don't feel like super ragged or like run down, but towards the end of the day, I'm like, oh yeah, this is kind of low. Or like sometimes it's like 3 o'clock. I'm like, I kind of feel tired. And I check it and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess apparently I've been doing more than I thought because this seems accurate. I know sometimes people kind of like make fun of it, but I was like, I don't know, this seems pretty accurate to me. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's one of those things of like, okay, I had a typical work day. I didn't feel all that much, but like then you do one thing that night And then you're like, well, I can do another thing the next night. And I think it's kind of this like slow impact for them. Like by the end of the weekend, you're like, oh, I am really tired. Like, where did that come
Totally.
from? It's like, well, it was kind of maybe lingering in the shadows the whole time. It
Mm-hmm.
just depends. Are you taking that moment to pause and go, what am I feeling like? Versus like, oh, I'm kind of okay, or oh, I'm really tired, but I'm not going to let being tired from work impact me wanting to actually do something fun and kind of
Mm-hmm.
unwind, let off some steam type of thing.
Totally. And I think that there's a way that you can say yes without overextending yourself. Like, I know that I am just the person who I go to bed at 8 o'clock. And so if we have plans that start at 6, like I'm leaving at 7, 7:15 probably because I want to go to sleep and that's important to me. If you're at my house, I will start dimming the lights and like start brushing my teeth. And people are like, "You good?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you need to leave my house. Like I'm going to bed soon." And everyone just knows it about me and that's fine. Um, so I think that there are ways to do things and leave at an appropriate time. And then also like if you do want to go to a restaurant or a bar or a friend's house, like bring your tools. And I think that that is really important too. And something people are like, "Oh, I didn't even think of the fact that I could bring a hat and my glasses and earplugs, especially when you first start kind of returning to doing things and saying yes more often." Um, because setting yourself up for that success is essential to doing more things long term.
Yeah, and I think like my one friend I know, they're like, I definitely do better when I have some downtime. So I
Mm-hmm.
think they kind of have a general rule of like, I may be doing something once, maybe twice during the
Mm-hmm.
week
Mm-hmm.
because I need that other time to myself to recharge during the week. If I say yes, I start to notice that it impacts my mood, my demeanor, like just my general energy levels. So they have a kind of they had like that moment to kind of test and see and they go, "Oh, that's great, but I've been really busy this week already." And like their
Yeah.
definition of busy is I've done one or two things already, and if
Mm-hmm.
someone that doesn't maybe know them and goes, okay, well, like you just were at home doing nothing, quote unquote, right? Like, no, they were doing something. They were
Mm-hmm.
knowing that if they did something more than just being at home, maybe taking that time to just relax,
Mm-hmm.
maybe get some like cleaning done or something. I don't know. They
Mm-hmm.
weren't gonna feel good for the rest of the week into the weekend.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that you can, if you do need to say no to something last minute, which I know can be difficult, I think that you can try to change a plan alternatively. So recently, I had a friend and I going to dinner plan like a Wednesday night. There's a excellent happy hour, not that I drink, but like all of the appetizers are like $4, which is amazing. And so we like go and sit at the bar usually and like get wings and french fries. And I was like, dude, I cannot do this. Like I just don't feel well. And so instead of me going there, I was just like having a kind of like a cruddy day and tired and whatever. She just came over and we hung out and then she left. And I feel like that's a very also reasonable thing to do is to just change the plan instead of going to sit in like a really busy environment, be like, hey, come here instead. Like I have snacks, which is what we did.
Yeah, and I think it helps that either by luck or I don't know, gradual shifting over time. Like a lot of the people I do interact with, like we have very similar outlooks and thoughts where they're like, yeah, I would much rather just go to someone's house and sit around. Or they're like, do you know how much I miss just being like when I had roommates and we were just kind of doing our own separate thing, but we were just lounging around and maybe occasionally we would pipe up or it'd be hours. They're like, can we just like go to someone's house and do nothing and just do our own thing and not
Truly.
feel like we have to interact? And we're like, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Like,
Why not? We could just read at my house.
yeah.
Or
So,
like yeah, I feel like that's exactly correct. But it is absolutely essential for you to be able to say no, feel comfortable saying no, and knowing your limits and boundaries. I think that's the whole point here is like knowing where you stand personally with your health, how you're feeling, etc. And then understanding what you can say yes to in a week and what you can say no to in a week. And it's okay to do, and you don't have to feel like you're never going to get invited again. I know it can feel, especially with new people, where you're like, if you say no the first time, they're never going to ask you again. But I literally said to someone the other day who we're like kind of friends with this one couple, and then they always invite us to this other people's house, and it never works out. So I literally just texted them back and I was like, yeah, just keep inviting us. Like one of these days it'll work out. And I think that you can be open and honest about that. Like today is not a good day, but let's try to make it happen a different day. And even if you have to cancel last minute, most people are pretty understanding. And like every meme about plans literally on this planet is about how people don't want to do those plans.
And they're so excited that
Excited
someone
when they get
canceled.
canceled. Exactly. And so I don't think you have to be like, it can feel frustrating to have to cancel for sure, but it doesn't have to be like the end of the world, if that makes
I
sense.
think
Or it
sometimes
feels
like
like it.
if I do and I'm like either on the fence or like, generally just I'm like, oh, that's a bummer. Like was looking forward to this, whatever it may be. Like usually by that like evening, a couple hours later, even the next day, whatever it may be, because I have to go to bed really early. I'm just like, I am so glad I said no. So I think sometimes there's that little like,
Always.
let me connect the like thing that I feel really good about right now to like the decision that I made in the moment when it was maybe feeling more challenging or not the thing I wanted to do, but was knowing that was maybe the thing I needed to do type of thing. And then I think that helps reinforce it too of like, hey, I'd made a difficult decision, but I'm really appreciating the fact that I feeling really well rested right now. I am getting up at my normal time, feeling refreshed, and I can enjoy like a relaxing morning as my like treat type of thing. And sometimes I know like there's that comparison of like dizziness to like a broken bone or something. Like, people are so much more understanding with these like physical ailments people have. Like, why aren't we extending that same type of like understanding, acceptance to dizziness? Sometimes I feel like this is kind of like drinking culture when people like maybe are peer pressuring or like, why aren't you getting another drink? Or like, let's do whatever. And someone's like, oh no, I got an early day or something. And people, for the most part, or hopefully like go, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Like,
Yeah,
why
I
can't we
agree.
just extend that type of like understanding here as well?
I don't know. But I feel like people honestly are getting more and more understanding. And if people are just being rude or mean about it, like those are probably not your people. Just honestly.
Yeah,
Most
I was
people are
like,
pretty
sometimes
freaking
again,
understanding who are
playground
nice.
rules. If they're not like a good person to be around, like treat yourself how others want to be treated. Like if they're not
Mm-hmm.
doing that, like maybe they're not the
Why?
ones to keep interacting with, but
Yeah, I agree.
easier said than done.
Yeah, that's definitely true. That is definitely true.
Yeah, so I
Say
think
no, team.
finding people that also have maybe healthy understanding of their own boundaries and feeling comfortable to also say no, I think that also helps form like a mutual understanding and more of that acceptance and
Hmm.
I say flexibility to react nicely for when you have to do it because you are probably
Mm-hmm.
reacting nicely when other people have to because you understand. So trying to have that mutual ground to stand on, I think helps with this as well.
Totally. I agree. Anything else?
Hmm. I don't know. Maybe my favorite thing, honestly,
Yeah.
is I love a paper calendar. I know a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people put things on their phones. I do
Mm-hmm.
that occasionally if it's really important, but I don't know. Sometimes I don't trust it. It like thinks it knows what time you want it to be and then it changes the time on you or it like changes the like it tries to outsmart
So
you and
funny.
sometimes it makes it worse. So I like having things on my paper thing. So a really nice excuse if people ask me about something is, "Oh, I got to go home and check my calendar because it's not all in my phone. I'm not bringing my cute little date book calendar with me places to open up and check." Like I'm like, "No, I'm going to have to wait and go home and check my calendar because then they aren't
Mm-hmm.
watching you check, seeing there's nothing there
Mm.
and then you having to say no."
I think that's amazing that you
So
do
then I
that.
just go, I'm busy. And whether it's you just penciling in, no, this is my night for
Mm-hmm.
me, like that's you
Yeah.
being busy. So again, just because
100%.
I'm available doesn't mean I'm free. Like I have my
100%.
own things that I want to do. And
Mm-hmm.
I really like just being like, I gotta check my calendar. And then you
Yeah.
follow up of like, I'm busy, but maybe sometime later or you make a little note of reaching out to them to try to
Mhm.
coordinate something instead.
I love that. I definitely want people to know that this is not the episode of how to say yes to things, because we also talk about that a lot in other podcasts, in vestibular group fit, all over the place. But this is how to actually say no to things, and giving you permission to say no, and knowing that it is okay to say no, I can't, I don't want to, I don't feel like it, or cancel. It's okay to do that. And honestly, no one's going to be mad at you if they're a good person. If they're a crappy
Yep.
person, they might be mad at you, and then that's a
Or
sign.
I know sometimes too, if it's one of those things that like it's a important occasion type of thing that can be harder to say no to. And again, that might be more of a more last minute in the moment type of thing of like, hey, I tried putting this off as long as I could. I've tried so much to try to feel ready to do this and I just can't. And there's plenty of ways to show support and wanting to be there depending on the situation outside of actually being there too. So there can be some ways to try to follow up and not make up for it, but just let them know that you're still there and thinking of them, even if you aren't physically there.
Yeah, I think that's very smart and makes a lot of sense. All right. Thanks so much for listening, guys. We will see you next week. Bye.